In today's demonstration, we show using an anti-gravity pump to do bottling. Please be mindful that transferring liquids under pressure has its own risks and dangers, and that you do so at your own risk. We are going to assume that you've already seen our other video on how to use this pump, so we're going to go straight into what makes it different today, this control box. And all it really is this little dial that will control the speed of the pump. Meaning that we can fill a bottle at the speed we want, not the speed we're forced to do. We're going to do about 75% power, but you could go down as low as about 50%. There'll be a link in the description so you can grab one of these guys so that you can make your own control box, and it's super easy to use, as it's a self-contained PWM DC motor controller. It's like a dimmer switch for a motor, although the manufacturer would probably disapprove. We, on the other hand, think this should be built into the power supply that comes with the pump. And speaking of power, that's all that needs to be wired into this. Power in, wire it up directly to the motor. The hardest part is mounting it properly inside of a project box. We're not going to go into depth on that in this video, but it is a good first-time project, and we even put an extension cable in ours so that we can mount it wherever we need during filming. And you know, the control box is pretty cool, but it's not the only special equipment we need. We also will need a stainless steel bottling wand. I mean, it's cool because it's stainless steel and all, but what it really does is the tip screws on and off. And that's really important because if you use a plastic one, that black tip is going to shoot right off. And as we take a closer look at these threads, I hope that the seriousness of the situation is starting to sink in. Like, yeah, it's cool, but race cars have fire extinguishers in them for a reason. And even professional photography equipment can kill you if you unplug it wrong. So what we'd like to say here is a little bit of respect goes a long way. Professional tools are fun, but even the professional brewers wear eye protection. But one final note on safety is that every junction where hose meets barb, there should be a clamp. You should probably also use thick wall hose, but we just now realized that after filming. That's because in this line, we could get up to 10 to 30 psi, maybe even more if something goes wrong. That's why we use a foot switch as a dead man switch in case something goes wrong. Once Phil takes his foot off that, the pump stops getting electricity. But on a more familiar note, let's point out that you should probably have your beer primed already, or use something like carbonation drops or conditioning tabs to prime in the bottle. But just because we're skipping the bottling bucket doesn't mean we can't add some last-minute flavor additions as well. And that can actually be a benefit because that means you can flavor per bottle. So you can add something like natural habanero or do a war crime like yellow cake from Mad Dog. And yeah, it's fun to put a spin on Russian roulette, but do make sure that everyone knows what they're playing and don't surprise someone with something that can hurt them. But that's it for the lecture. Let us set up the pump for the demonstration. And we've been a big fan of this pump. It's not for everyone, but it's made making these videos a lot easier. For one, it's super simple to bottle a single bottle of hard seltzer, for which we would recommend a plastic bottle with a fresh cap every time. No exceptions. You can reuse a bottle, but you can't clean that membrane. But for the demonstration, we're going to use a clear bottle. And also, let's get to it. So with everything sanitized and with Phil finally putting on his safety glasses, and yeah, it's a requirement, and we're not going to move forward until he finally complies. Thank you. And with that, we're finally ready to get this show on the road. Remembering that the bottling wand will displace just the right amount for a headroom at the top, what we really want to pay attention to during the fill time is that we don't build up pressure on the line any more than we have to. You can see Phil's achieving this by making sure that the tip of the bottling wand is completely pressed in before turning on the pump. He will also make sure the pump is off before lifting the bottling wand. This is made super easy by having a foot pedal like we mentioned earlier. But unfortunately, we can see the first negative part about bottling this way, and that is a lot of aeration in there. If you don't preload your lines with something, you're always going to have a lot of aeration, and your first bottle's usually going to be the worst one out of it all. And to make matters worse, there's a bit of foam in there that seems to have been left over from when we were sanitizing the lines earlier. That's no matter. As we like to say, the first bottle is for snacking. You know, pancake rules. First one's always the ugliest. But that took about a minute to do a full liter, and that will depend more on what you have the actual speed set to based off the motor controller. And if we did this again, we probably would turn that down to about 65% on the controller, just so that it'd be less aggressive first contact. But like we said, one of the big keys here is that you don't want pressure on the line when you don't need it. Like here, you see it's not shooting liquid everywhere. But if we give it a second, turn the pump on, and squirt again, it's all over the place. Thanks, Phil. And see, had that not been just the tip, but one of the hoses coming loose, that could be a lot of beer all over the place really quickly. But that's basically it. Bottling with this kind of pump is really more so all about the preparation rather than the act of doing it. It's just bottling. You've done it 100 times before from a bottling bucket already, probably. Or maybe you're more old school and bottle directly off of a racking cane. All of these methods are great and valid and have perfect uses for just the right occasions. This pump has a tendency to introduce a small amount of aeration, but I can think of two groups that this tool is vital for. One, people like me who make YouTube videos about brewing. It just makes moving things around the studio a lot easier. And B, that home brewer you've known for a long time that might not be able to lift things like they used to. And we can think of a few people in the retail world that may have stayed around in brewing a few more years had they had something like this. And on that depressing note, we do say yes, you can bottle with this. It's just not ideal. Because, of course, anything short of a CO2 transfer directly to a keg is, of course, less than perfect. But if you want more information about these pumps, check out some of these videos here. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.